Welcome back to DSLR Life. Great to have you with me once again. Well, I'm back in the New Forest, and the last time that I was here was back in August, and it's now the end of October, and a lot has happened in my life since then. But I'm back out, determined to take some photographs in these beautiful autumn colours. Look at this. The bracken changing to these lovely autumn golds, and the trees changing colour as well. It's a wet day, and that's a mixed blessing in the autumn. And I say it's a mixed blessing because the wet really helps to bring out the contrast and the saturation, literally the saturation in these colours, and I just love that. It brings them to life in a way that the sunlight on them doesn't do, except perhaps in golden hour. But in the middle of the day, it can just be a bit too harsh. And so these colours are lovely. And just looking at the path ahead here and looking through the trees around me, you can see how, because it's been so wet, the trees themselves, the tree bark, really stands out. That tree toward the end of the path here, as the path just goes around to the right, just really standing out in a way that it wouldn't normally do. So I'm rather liking this scene just across this track from me, and there's a slightly lighter patch, slightly open patch, where the light's just catching the bracken, the golden bracken, and just giving it that little bit of a lift, and it's framed quite nicely by the trees either side. And so I've just stopped to take a look at that. And it's one of those things where, I mean, you can't really tell from the view on the iPhone here, because the phone just adjusts the exposure to make it look like everything is bright. But it's actually a really dim and dark scene. And of course the camera wants me to do the same. The camera also wants me to just give it more light. And it's one of those things where the right exposure really, to me, to at least some extent, is what does your eye see? And I see a dim scene. And so I want to capture a dim scene. I don't want to pump up the exposure time and the exposure value to a point where it just looks bright, because it isn't, and it loses its character. And part of the charm of it is that it is a dark scene, except that the colour of the bracken and this slight extra bit of light on the bracken is enough to just lift the bracken out of that gloom, just enough for it to be striking to your eye. And so that's what I'm trying to capture with this shot. And so I'm a full stop of light down from what the camera is telling me I should use for this shot. I'm really enjoying just being out in these colours and in this weather. I've taken all sorts of shots, and some of them will work and some of them won't, but I'm a bit of an opportunist when it comes to my photography. So there you go. I'm just wandering about and seeing what's there, and also seeing whether or not there are places that I can come back to at a later date. So I rather like this scene down here. It's really simple. It's just a path, an almost straight path leading into the distance, but it's lined by these beautiful colours of the bracken, of course. And just at the other end of this path, and you'll see when I show you the picture, but just at the other end of this path, it gets brighter. There is this chink of light on the path, because I think there's a path going across it there. There's a path crossing this track, and so that means there's a break in the trees to the side of the path, and the light is striking it there. And so it's just this lovely little chink of light at the end. So I'm shooting this with quite a long lens on. See if I can tell you what. Let's have a look. Yeah, 120 mil, not that long, I suppose. Given that this camera will go to, given that this camera will go to 600 mil quite comfortably. 120 mil, f7.1 and 1/8 of a second on a tripod mounted, and shutter release with the remote there. So hopefully that'll be a nice little shot to take away. So I've been hanging around this little bridge here for about the last 10 or 15 minutes really, just trying to get a feel for the place, because I don't know, I just feel there's a picture to be had, and I've tried a few things, and I've done a little bit of video, and I've taken 1 or 2 shots, and then I crossed back over the bridge the way I came. So it's always worth looking behind you at where you've came from, or approaching from a different direction, and that's what I've just done. And I've stepped to the right of this bridge, and I'm just going to turn the camera around, and just straight ahead of me now you can see this rather gorgeous scene, and what I love is the way that the trees either side are kind of tunneling over this little ford, and the path beyond it, and the way the light is striking the path in the distance. And I just feel there's got to be a shot there, so I'm going to play around with this one. Let's see what happens. Okay, I think I have a really quite nice composition here, and you'll notice that I am about 2/3 of a stop underexposed according to the camera here. Again, because it really is a dimly lit scene, and it's a dark, dull day, and I want to reflect that in the image that I capture. I'm on f7.1 because that seems to be honest, about the sweet spot for sharpness for this camera. And so I'm focused just beyond this little foot ford here, and anything beyond that really should be sharp. I did fool around with being a little further zoomed out, but the problem then was one, I felt the shot lost some intimacy, but also the bridge structure itself came into view, and I really didn't want that. It's not really pretty. It gives this very harsh line straight line compared to all the natural lines that are in the forest. But I think that's a really nice little scene, that. Absolutely beautiful. Beautiful. Okay, I think I've been here long enough. I think that's the picture that I felt was here all along, and so I'm going to see what else I can find now. So I'm looking back towards the bridge that I just crossed, and it's a nice scene actually. I'm rather liking this. It's got there's a lovely tone to it. It doesn't really come out on the phone. Again, the phone is making it just a bit too bright and a bit blue in colour. The white balance doesn't seem quite right on the phone screen, but this is a lovely scene. And it's a good example of where positioning really matters. If I go central here, I miss the framing really of the tree on the right, I feel. But if I come a little bit to the right, then you get this sort of echo of several limbs actually, one behind the other, all just going into the distance, leaning across the path there. And I love that. I think that's brilliant. So we've got the potential of a lead-in line from the path on my left, because I've stepped off the path. These trees framing it from the right as well. If I go too far to the right, then what happens is the branches, the lower branches from this tree in the foreground just start to cut across the tree in the background. I really don't want that to happen. So exactly where I stand does matter in this shot, and exactly the height of the camera as well. And I think it just needs to be a little higher than it is. So I'm going to set this one up. Oh, it looks like there's someone coming. I can see a reflection. So I'll get this one set up and then I'll take a shot once this person has gone by. Hi there. Bit wet down there. So I'm going to take some shots here. Well, firstly at 0.4 of a second, and that's the shutter speed the camera will use. Based on an exposure for the pathway, which is the brightest object in the scene. I'm actually going to, though, also come back a whole stop from that. So a stop underexposed. And it really brings the form of these tree trunks, particularly given how wet they are. You get a lovely contrast in this image. There's a lovely natural vignette. The tree on the right is just fully in the shot from where it comes from the ground, and the path from the left is coming from the opposing from the left. I'm just going to zoom in a little and put the stream of the forward center third, bottom third of the frame, and just see how that looks if I just crop in for an even more intimate shot. So if you are a watcher of my channel, then you'll know I've been a bit intermittent lately. I was hoping I would get back to doing some kind of vlog every week, but it has not proved possible since I finished my degree. Since then I have been trying to carve out some kind of a living for myself. The things that I was hoping I would do post-degree have basically been scuppered because of the blessed COVID. So I find myself trying to scratch a living using some of my practical carpentry skills and that kind of thing. And that's taken up a lot of my time. But I count myself very blessed really that I am able to do that much, given the position a lot of people find themselves in at the moment. I've just checked on Clear Outside phone app, and it looks like this cloud cover is very much here to stay. I was hoping it might break up a bit by sunset, but according to Clear Outside, we're going to have pretty much 90-something% cloud cover at both the low middle and high level, and so the chances of getting any real colour in terms of sunset colours today are pretty much nil. And so I think it's time to go home. I've got a little bit of some domestic chores to do. Well, it's possible I may eventually make it back to the car, but around every corner there seems to be another shot. And I'm playing around with the view of this tree on the right here. There's something about it, you know, it just looks like a dancer. I don't know if you can see it. It's like this, like the bottom of the trunk here is the leg on which she's standing, and this is a leg flicked out behind, and she's arching her back, and there's her arm going one way and an arm the other. I don't know if you can see that, but it just looks like a tree in motion. And I'm going to try and find a couple of different angles at which this might work. So if it works, I will show you. So I finally made it back to the car, and I have been out, I think, for about 3.5 hours. Probably walked about, I don't know, a mile and a half at most, something like that. And I've really enjoyed that. There has been something to see around every bend, and sometimes more often than that. So it's been absolutely wonderful. And do you know, I had forgotten, I think, the joy of taking a simple landscape photograph. That so much of what I have been doing lately has been astro related, and I've been setting my sights quite high in terms of what I achieve with my astro photography. And it's complex and it's difficult stuff, and most of the time it doesn't work, or you can't get out because the conditions aren't right. I've bought myself a Nikon 20mm f1.8 lens. I've had it for 5 weeks, and I have been dying to get out on a clear night to go and use it, and you know, a dark enough night to use it. And there just has not been a night yet where there has been no moon and it's been clear. But there you go. It is what it is. So thank you again for watching, and I'll catch you again next time. Bye.